Long ago, the protagonist Hayama witnessed a tragic scene where two siblings he was close to were killed by a monster. Shocked, he was unable to confront the creature, which almost dragged him along. However, the siblings used their last breath to save him and urged him to escape. This incident left him with a deep aversion to monsters. These monsters are spirits from another world that have lost their way into the human world and inhabit objects to survive. Thus, they are collectively known as Tsukimagami. Hayama is now strong enough to face a Tsukimagami. His uncle, on the other hand, is responsible for returning benign Tsukimagami to their world. The police are aware of this, but they leave the handling to families specialized in exorcism. His uncle merely needs to speak to the Tsukimagami, recite a command, and they would enter an object and be brought back for worship. The police also remember Hayama pursuing a Tsukimagami, but they believe he would opt for conversation over physical confrontation. However, upon checking, they found Hayama had beaten and subdued a Tsukimagami. His uncle had to ask another family to look after Hayama for a while. Back home, Hayama explained that he acted to prevent the Tsukimagami from causing harm. His uncle argued that not all Tsukimagami are evil. One should observe their actions, and only in their final stage should physical force be used. Most Tsukimagami simply wish to return, and their job is to listen to these wishes and help them. Hayama, however, attacks and forcibly seals them without a word. He believes he is not wrong. He witnessed loss due to the same reasoning his uncle preached. His uncle saw that Hayama still harbored hatred for Tsukimagami. He thought Hayama could overcome it, but since he hasn't, he decided on a strict approach. He informed Hayama about special cases where benign, self-controlled Tsukimagami are allowed freedom. There is a special Tsukimagami family living with a human owner. Starting tomorrow, Hayama will live with them under the guise of monitoring. This strategy was his uncle's attempt to change him. If Hayama refused to comply, he would be stripped of his exorcist title. Consequently, Hayama had to start packing his belongings, yet he couldn't grasp what was wrong with his action. He paused, contemplating over a photograph of the siblings he had lost, debating whether to bring it along. He later arrived in Kyoto, where his uncle briefed him about Botan, his new housemate. The purpose of his stay was to alter his perception of Tsukimagami. Meanwhile, the unique Tsukimagami he was about to meet were occupied with subduing other, more rebellious spirits. Remembering that they were expecting a newcomer, they hastily returned home. Upon Hayama's arrival at the house, he encountered Haori and Kushige, two of the Tsukimagami residents, and his wariness was evident. Botan, a student, was absent at the time. The remaining 4 inhabitants soon made their appearances. The girl with pink hair was identified as Kagami, the young man with amber eyes as Suzuri, the elder sister as Yu, and the striking brother as Nagi. Haori revealed that they were 6 Tsukimagami serving Botan, but were nonetheless open to welcoming Hayama. He, however, openly expressed his disdain for Tsukimagami and declared his intention to remain distant and observant, rather than form bonds with them. Nagi perceived the anger boiling under Hayama's surface and reacted with indignation, prompting a physical confrontation. Nagi prohibited any intervention from the others. Haori, rather than attempting to halt the imminent conflict, stood back, intrigued to see the outcome. Nagi then manifested 2 swords, clarifying his intention to fight with the blunt edges to inflict pain rather than harm. Hayama, recognizing the advanced and potentially hazardous nature of these Tsukimagami, brought out 2 rings bequeathed to him by the siblings, weapons effective against Tsukimagami. The clash was intense and relentless, with neither side showing any sign of compromise. Yet it was apparent to the onlookers that both were holding back their full capabilities. At a pivotal moment, Yu received an alert that Botan was on her way home and signaled for everyone to intervene in the fight. In a twist of misunderstanding, everyone simultaneously attacked Hayama instead. He endured several hits, which only solidified his belief that Tsukimagami were untrustworthy entities. Upon Botan's arrival, she inquired about the tumult, only to be met with a wall of silence from everyone present. Hayama managed a brief greeting before collapsing. Thus began the life of Tsukimagami, a girl close to Tsukimagami and a boy who despised them. Botan subsequently brought Hayama into the house, apologizing for not expecting his early arrival. However, Hayama saw it as his own oversight. Though he verbally expressed no anger, his terrifying eyes startled Baten. His uncle had left him there for a year to gain a deeper understanding of Tsukimagami, so Hayama figured he just needed to learn the basics. He doubted Baten could manage 6 Tsukimagami on her own. Suddenly, he realized someone was missing. Nagi, it turned out, was suspended outside as punishment. He refused to accept his penalty while Hayama was attacked by the group. Yet it was Nagi who initiated the conflict, hence his punishment. Hayama noticed Baten's lack of knowledge about exorcists like himself. His family borrowed power from the deity governing the boundary between the human and spirit realms. To the Tsukimagami, exorcists were like police officers, but while his uncle was a regular officer, Hayama was more like a harsh American cop. He accused Baten of being deceived by the monsters, which angered her. She refused to accept her family being labeled as monsters and gave Hayama 3 days to assimilate and accept the Tsukimagami or else be sent back. However, his uncle had warned that leaving midway would result in losing his position. Confused about how to assimilate, Hayama received no answers from the departing Tsukimagami. Nagi, having freed himself, came in to taunt Hayama. He thought Baten was being too lenient by giving Hayama 3 days. Nagi didn't want to start more trouble since fighting now would cost Hayama his 3 days. He suggested Hayama follow him for guidance. Baten felt she might have been too harsh, but Hayori agreed with her decision. Meanwhile, Nagi was leading Hayama to hunt Tsukimagami. Their condition for freedom was to lend their power to exorcists for suppressing their kind. Nagi offered to speak to Baten on Hayama's behalf if he helped. Hayama observed Nagi avoiding work, but Nagi excused it as trying to get along with Hayama. Seeing Nagi hunt his own kind with indifference, Hayama realized Nagi didn't enjoy this task. Indeed, it was dirty work. But all 6 were willing to do it just to be with Baten. Hayama and Nagi next headed to a hideout of the underworld, which was being terrorized by a Tsukimagami. Upon their arrival, the creature turned to attack them, but the duo cooperated and successfully sealed it. Nagi, noticing Hayama's allergic reaction, thought his hatred for Tsukimagami was that intense. However, that wasn't the case. On their way back, Hayama confided in Nagi about a Tsukimagami residing in an umbrella that took his siblings' lives. He was puzzled by the secrecy surrounding that Tsukimagami's information. Therefore, he aimed to rise to the top of his family to access information about it. The next morning, Hayama got up early for training, but Baten called him for breakfast. He preferred to finish training first. During the meal, he ate only his portion without asking for more, which made Baten perceive him as overly rigid. Hayama had devised a plan. If he managed to get the majority's support signatures during his stay, he would continue living there. Today, he was to work with Suzuri and Kagami. Baten worried about Hayama's rigid nature clashing with Suzuri, who tended to flirt with girls on the streets. Hayama thought Suzuri was deceiving humans, but Suzuri was actually trying to make friends. Kagami's eating habits also irritated Hayama, as he believed Tsukimagami didn't need to eat. He saw their actions as attempts to mimic humans. However, Suzuri and Kagami explained they were only trying to understand humans better to serve Baten more effectively. Hayama came to see Suzuri's flirting as a mere hobby and Kagami's eating as an energy boost for work. They hoped Hayama would stop giving them disdainful looks. The trio then set out to meet Yaejin, a Tsukimagami who wished to become a special case. She was a soul-imbued medicinal grinding pillow. Suzuri asked her why she wanted to be a special case, to which she replied it was because of a sense of familiarity, making her wish to stay in the human world. Her answer passed their test. Still, they needed Kagami to use a special mirror to check if she had a dark past. The mirror revealed she was safe and sinless, allowing her to stay. Suzuri then took Yaejin away, asking Hayama to call Baten to inquire if she needed anything. Upon hearing Baten's name, Yaejin panicked and attacked Suzuri. Hayama rushed to save Kagami and subdued Yaejin. Just as he was about to seal her, he learned the reason for her fear was hearing about Tsukimagami attacking their own kind in Baten's house. Suzuri returned and clarified the misunderstanding, after which Yaejin agreed to follow him. Kagami thanked Hayama and explained how special cases like Yaejin were handled. That evening, Hayama let Kagami sit on his back during his training, to which Baten, now accustomed to his rigid nature, didn't react. Hayoma's list for staying had 3 out of 6 signatures. The next morning, Hayoma woke up, realizing it was the 3rd day and he only had half the needed signatures. Meanwhile, 4 resentful Tsukimagami in the area had long been envious of Baton's Tsukimagami for following humans and hunting their kind. While washing his face, Hayoma met Baton, who expressed her desire to extend his deadline. But Hayoma, committed to his decision, chose to bear the consequence. He knew he only needed Yu's signature, as Hayori and Mr. Kushige hadn't objected from the start. Yu, particularly indifferent and tough, was his biggest challenge, but their personalities surprisingly aligned, leaving their fate to chance. When Hayoma met Yu, she had already handled a ceiling incident by herself. She bluntly stated her dislike for his initial actions and how he made Baton cry. She offered him 2 choices: give up or convince her thoroughly for her signature. As she exuded spiritual energy, the 4 resentful Tsukimagami noticed and approached. Nagi, sensing the situation, knew if Yu was serious, Hayoma was in trouble. Hayoma, focused solely on fleeing, didn't retaliate. Yu relentlessly threw giant needles at him, and when one hit his scarf, it immediately wrapped around him. She urged him to fight back, not just run away. Yu then summoned several hairpins and shot them at Hayoma, who still refrained from retaliating. She confronted him about his prejudice, prompting his admission that his time here was meant to challenge those very biases. After 2 days, he started to feel that they were indeed different from other Tsukimagami. He was still hesitant to act against them until he fully recognized this difference. Yu's perception of Hayoma began to change. Meanwhile, Hari at home informed Hayoma's uncle that Hayoma seemed likely to stay, regardless of the outcome. However, the uncle warned them of the deeper darkness in Hayoma's heart. He apologized for any trouble Hayoma might cause, hoping they would take good care of his nephew. Yu returned Hayoma's scarf, and he confidently stated he still had half a day to change her mind and earn her signature. He also noted Yu's human-like affection for Baton, embarrassing her and causing her to throw a needle up into the air. The rival Tsukimagami appeared, as did Nagi. Annoyed by Hayoma blocking their way, one of them knocked him aside. The 2 groups were evenly matched, and Nagi suspected Yu had caused this situation. Suzuri sensed an imminent fight. Meanwhile, Hayoma was trapped separately. Nagi suggested pausing to get Hayoma. The enemy Tsukimagami, feeling underestimated, decided to target Hayoma first. The group had to split up to fight. Nagi held off the rooster-crowned Tsukimagami, while Yu went to free Hayoma. Suzuri had managed to call Hayori, who brought Mr. Kushige with her, hoping this situation would reveal Hayoma's true nature. One Tsukimagami threw a hook at Yu, which Suzuri trapped with ink. Another used an obi belt to form a flower, targeting him, but Kagami deceived it with a mirror. Suddenly, Kagami sensed movement in the building and alerted Yu. A large Tsukimagami with scissors for hands appeared, but she dodged in time. Nagi was still engaged in a solo fight with a rooster-crowned Tsukimagami. He clarified that his obedience to humans was similar to how his adversaries followed their leader's orders. He viewed them as enemies to be eliminated because they used humans as playthings, torturing them for amusement. However, Hayoma overheard their conversation and managed to escape from Yu's spell on his own. When the scissor-handed Tsukimagami attacked, Hayoma dodged and split it in 2. As the other 2 charged at him, he swiftly took them down, including the rooster-crowned one. The rooster-crowned Tsukimagami, realizing Hayoma enjoyed this violence, accused him of being like them. Hayoma didn't deny it, vowing to eliminate any Tsukimagami that threatened humans. Hayori began to understand a part of Hayoma's nature. Previously, he viewed Tsukimagami as mere objects harmful to humans, but he seemed to have changed somewhat. She believed his twisted soul could still be healed. She was confident that Hayoma could save Baton, who had been saved by a Tsukimagami in the past. The fate of Hayoma and Baton would be intertwined by the Tsukimagami. Years ago, Baton was on the brink of life and death, so her uncle entrusted the 6th Tsukimagami to protect her and allow her to live as a human. When Hayoma's uncle called Hayori, she had set a condition for agreeing to take care of Hayoma. Now Hayoma had Yu's signature, starting his life there anew. He realized there was a different kind of connection here, one he needed to carefully observe to see if there were Tsukimagami he could trust. Botan rushed home upon hearing he had gathered all the signatures. Hyoma rigidly turned to confirm what she said and politely reintroduced himself, making her laugh at his stiffness. Meanwhile, the others understood that Yu signed to avoid disrupting their operations and mentioned that a crucial time was approaching. Botan informed Hyoma about the house's cooking rotation, which he was comfortable with, being a decent cook himself. Then they encountered Yu and Haori, who decided to reveal the secret agreement she had made with Hyoma's uncle. They all gathered in the large room. The secret pact was that Hyoma would stay as their overseer. In return, they set a condition to test and evaluate him over a year to see if he was worthy of a role they had been seeking for a long time. Botan knew about it, but was silenced by Yu. The position they were looking for was the head of the household, or in other words, a fiancé for Botan. Hyoma was completely dumbfounded, unable to comprehend the situation, while Botan blushed profusely. Botan thought they were joking, but they were entirely serious. Their mission was to find someone to take over this role, as all 6 of them were objects that Botan would bring with her when she married. The signatures Hyoma had gathered signified his approval. His uncle had also agreed, so now it was up to Hyoma. Evidently, only Yu had yet to accept him. She warned that if Hyoma hurt Botan, she would retaliate immediately. Hyoma, however, couldn't accept this proposition immediately. Agreeing outright didn't seem right, but outright refusal would disrespect his uncle, so he asked for more time to think. He then excused himself for a jog, appearing calm and collected. Botan worried about the awkwardness of this situation lasting an entire year. She didn't believe Hyoma would accept this makeshift family. Haori thought Botan was worrying too much and joked about her potential spinsterhood. At least they saw that Hyoma was calm rather than panicking. However, once outside, Hyoma was visibly flustered and still puzzled about the situation. The next day, Botan didn't know how to approach Hyoma, while Haori enjoyed watching her discomfort. Hyoma had called his uncle, initially thinking he was placed in this situation to toughen up his mental strength. However, his uncle was just concerned about Hyoma's lack of romantic experience at 21 and was trying to set him up with Haori. Hyoma hung up and went to find Haori to discuss the matter, but Haori and Mr. Kushige were out on duty. Yu and Nagi were busy dealing with the allies of the previous Tsukimagami and hadn't invited Hyoma along. Botan, about to leave the house, ran into Hyoma. She advised him not to worry about the arrangement Haori had made, but his blunt response left her saddened, and she departed. Suzuri observed that Hyoma was foolishly cold in his response, causing Botan distress. Kagami even cried and hit Hyoma for what he said. Hyoma still didn't fully grasp their intentions. Despite hearing Hyoma's clear words, Botan felt a sense of disappointment deep inside. Then, she suddenly encountered a Tsukimagami. The Tsukimagami Hyoma encountered was the leader of the group Yu and Nagi were dealing with. After his subordinates were taken care of, one revealed their leader might have captured Botan, prompting them to return immediately to rescue her. Botan tried to flee, but the Tsukimagami, a cigarette lighter, used ash to block her path. However, Hyoma swiftly intervened and pushed the Tsukimagami back. Right then, Yu and Nagi arrived. Nagi summoned his sword to slice the Tsukimagami in half, allowing Yu to wrap it up. Yu hurried to check on Botan, while Hyoma learned that the Tsukimagami group was trying to self-eliminate, explaining their need for someone to protect Botan. They thanked Hyoma for his timely rescue. Afterwards, Nagi pulled Yu away to deal with the remaining Tsukimagami she had trapped. Hyoma took this moment to apologize to Botan for his earlier misunderstanding. He clarified that he didn't mean to be dismissive, but rather he wanted her not to worry about the comments made by Haori's group. At home, they were uncertain whether Hyoma had apologized yet, knowing he isn't the best at choosing his words. It wasn't that he was intentionally cold or indifferent. He simply struggled to find the right way to express himself. Botan laughed, realizing that both their families were quite complicated. The next morning, Nagi was bothered by Hyoma's idea of placing talismans around the house to prevent ordinary Tsukimagami from entering. Nagi informed him that Mr. Kushige had already erected a barrier around the house, making the talismans unnecessary. However, since Hyoma had already placed them, Nagi tasked him with removing them all. Suzuri remembered Haori and Mr. Kushige had gone to meet someone important and hoped they were okay. Meanwhile, Haori and Mr. Kushige had arrived to see Hayama's uncle. It had been a long time since their last meeting, and their purpose this time was to prevent an entity named Kai. Kai, an extremely dangerous entity, greeted them with an attack, trapping them in multiple walls. Hayama's uncle neutralized the flying blades and asked Kai to reduce such hostile greetings. Kai was one of the 3 great Tsukimagami, immensely powerful and thus imprisoned. In exchange for his confinement, he was granted the right to summon anyone to entertain him. The Exorcism Bureau recognized him as a special case, but feared his strength, so they had Itsuki, another Tsukimagami, seal him there. This duo could be considered the strongest among the Tsukimagami. Kai showed great interest in the fact that Hayama was living at Baton's house and wanted to hear all about it. He had both food and drink ready. When Hayama's uncle tried to find an excuse to leave, Kai wouldn't have it, insisting they stay for a few days to entertain him. Meanwhile, Hayama was collecting the talismans he had placed around the house, as Nagi thought they might affect Baton. However, Hayama felt something wasn't quite right. Kai revealed that Hayama's stay at Baton's house had 2 purposes. The first was to reform his character, and the second was to bring balance to Baton, who exists in the liminal space between humans and Tsukimagami. Her constant interaction with Tsukimagami necessitated Hayama's presence to provide equilibrium. Hayama then noticed that the talismans he placed had burned, indicating they had effectively prevented Tsukimagami from attacking. Kai warned Haori's group about the emergence of formidable adversaries and urged caution. The 2 Tsukimagami who destroyed Hayama's talismans approached him, while 4 others were attempting to tear down the remaining talismans, only to become paralyzed as they got closer. Hayama was forced to deceive them, claiming he was a government agent, not their intended target. As he turned away, one of the Tsukimagami realized that the government wouldn't know about spiritual barriers. Hayama turned back, intending to seal one and capture the other for interrogation, but he made a mistake. The Tsukimagami dodged his attack, and the one Hayama thought he had sealed was still at large. Yu, trying to contact Hayama to ask about the remaining talismans, received no response and saw that the talismans had burned, indicating trouble. Hayama, meanwhile, was convinced that the Tsukimagami were targeting Baton's guardians and refused to give them any information. The Tsukimagami sought details about Hayama and his family, suspecting they had been monitoring Baton's house for a while, unsure of Hayama's intention. They speculated whether Hayama's family was targeting Baton's powers and threatened to start a war over her if he didn't cooperate. Hayama prepared for combat, not caring about their motives but only focusing on the fact that they were targeting Baton. Any Tsukimagami that targets ordinary people needs to be eliminated. Aoji realized that Hayama knew nothing about Baton. Yu then appeared and explained the reason for Hayama's stay at Baton's place. Aoji, the Tsukimagami, received his answer, so Yu wanted him to leave. Hayama objected, but was stopped by Yu, as any physical altercation from him could escalate the situation. Aogi and his group were on a mission to gather information for their employer. Aogi wouldn't apologize for his excessive actions, as it was part of his job. While Hayama was busy planning how to defeat these 2 Tsukimagami if they met again, Yu sent him home and took care of the remaining talismans. On his way back, Hayama pondered Aogi's words about Baton's power, realizing there were still mysteries about her he didn't know. The next day, Haori suddenly dressed up for a date with Hayama, stemming from an incident 30 minutes prior. Haori had just returned from visiting Kai and learned about Hayama being interrogated by Aogi. Hayama, seeking to understand more about Baton, asked Haori out, but she declined due to an impending report deadline. She left hurriedly, and Hayama was left to discuss his concerns with Haori and Kagami. Knowing she had to disclose information sooner or later, Haori asked Hayama to wait for her at a convenience store. Her dressing up was to disguise as a couple with Hayama and follow Baton. This was so Hayama could see everything that surrounds Baton daily. Although there was a protective barrier at home, outside, Baton constantly felt the gaze of other Tsukimagami. Her classmates at school even inquired about her recent acquaintances, bringing Hayama to her mind. Haori then informed Hayama about Tsukimagami. Essentially, Tsukimagami are spirits that inhabit objects and gain power. She posed the question of what would happen if a Tsukimigami had a human body. Would its power be akin to a deity's? And Baten was the perfect vessel for Tsukimigami to inhabit. That's why there was an unspoken rule among Tsukimigami not to harm Baten. Hyoma now partially understood Aoji's earlier comments. Hyoma wanted to know if Haori's group could confidently claim they had no ill intentions towards Baten. Haori, slightly annoyed, told him to stop asking such questions as a joke, emphasizing that Baten had been entrusted to them long ago. During the first 3 years after the rule was established, Baten had to stay indoors because her presence caused sensitive children to fear and adults to shudder. During that time, a familial bond developed among the 6 of them. They spent much time helping Baten overcome the fear of those around her, and even more time ensuring her powers didn't affect others. Thanks to their efforts, they were recognized by Hyoma's uncle, so she expected Hyoma to trust his uncle's judgment. Confident in his ability to protect Baten in the future, Hyoma's declaration inadvertently made Kagami, who was eavesdropping, reveal herself. Both realized that Hyoma seemed ready to be Baten's lifelong partner, as his words implied a lifelong commitment. Baten, returning home at that moment, was puzzled to see them together. Haori lied that it was a friendship bonding party. Hyoma inquired about Baten's parents, but nobody knew them. Baten had been entrusted to this group since childhood, and after her grandfather's death, no one else claimed to be her family. After the gathering, Baten knew Haori had shared her past with Hyoma and worried he might find her strange or develop negative feelings towards her. However, contrary to her fears, Hyoma admired her, making her happy as he was the first to show such admiration upon learning about her past. Hyoma also felt that Tsukimigami close to Baten resembled his siblings, eliminating any remaining doubts he had about them. Then, as snow began to cover the streets, Baten continued her schooling routine, while Hyoma kept up his morning runs. Seeing him underdressed for the cold, Baten gave him a thermal bag to prevent catching a cold. As they left the house, Aoji arrived and was handed over to Suzuri. Kagami disapproved of Aoji, as he had previously injured Hyoma severely. Aoji temporarily accepted the explanation that Hyoma was at Baten's house solely for self-improvement and character development. Yet, his client still harbored doubts about their potentially significant activities. Suzuri skillfully maneuvered the conversation to make Aoji divulge that 3 significant forces were currently targeting the house. It seemed likely that the first move would be made by the Kyoto protection team. After this revelation, Aoji departed, and Nagi praised Suzuri for her adept handling of the situation and for extracting crucial information from Aoji. However, Aoji had kept back a piece of information. He had encountered a female Tsukimigami carrying an umbrella a few nights before. She had approached him seeking information, but Aoji only agreed to share in exchange for reciprocal information. This made Aoji curious about how this family would fare against the impending challenges. The next day, Hyoma needed to meet with the Kyoto protection team to secure an operational permit. He was forewarned by his uncle and others to be wary of the team's leader, known to be a sly old fox. During the meeting, Hyoma came across a blindfolded Tsukimigami, who was a special case employed to assist the team. The team members, perceiving Hyoma as just a wealthy heir, undervalued him. After witnessing their work methods, the team leader granted Hyoma permission to operate as an exorcist in their area. He even offered Hyoma a position on the team due to their staffing shortage. Furthermore, the leader asked Hyoma for assistance with a situation involving Baten's family. Baten, at school, pondered over preparing a hot pot for dinner that evening. The team leader then propositioned Hyoma for help, viewing Baten as a potential danger. He expressed concerns that if Baten awakened to her full Tsukimigami potential, she could become the ruler of all Tsukimigami across the globe, leading to unpredictable and possibly dire consequences. The leader himself couldn't confront Baten due to her uncle's and bodyguards' protection. Thus, he saw Hyoma, who had managed to penetrate this defensive layer and get close to Baten, as the only one capable of sealing the guards and dealing with her. Hyoma, however, firmly refused the offer. He didn't perceive Baten as a monster and harbored no ill feelings towards her family. Therefore, he declined the proposition once again. The leader used magic to encircle Hyoma and gave him a final chance to comply. Hayama's refusal led to the activation of the spell. One of the attackers who lunged at him immediately received a forceful kick from Hayama. Hayama's scars were exposed, asserting that he was not just a pampered, ineffective nobleman, but rather had substantial combat experience akin to a master. The leader realized that Hayama was not an easy opponent, skilled in both martial arts and magic. He then summoned several puppets, which he controlled, with the sole purpose of wearing down Hayama's stamina for a subsequent binding spell. However, Hayama was curious about the girl behind the leader. She was the daughter of the mob boss. When asked if she would join the fight, she declined. Hayama promptly kicked one of the attackers towards her direction. Another attacker's strike was grabbed and thrown by Hayama, who then drew his weapon and split two charging attackers in half with one swift motion. The leader recognized the weapon as the heirloom of Hayama's family, the heavenly guided blade, indicating Hayama's preparedness to reveal his family's techniques. The leader had heard about Hayama's tragic past and realized Hayama might have harbored and nurtured his hatred more than he had anticipated. Meanwhile, Nagi was out shopping for ingredients for hot pot and told Suzuri about Hayama's early start in fighting at age 12. Hayama had self-taught and risked his life hunting Tsukimagami, and by 18, he had single-handedly taken down a Tsukimagami considered as strong as his entire family. Back at the confrontation, Hayama had dealt with all the Tsukimagami controlled by the leader. Yet, before his men could act, the leader summoned another Tsukimagami he controlled. Hayama recognized this Tsukimagami as Yaejin, the girl he and Suzuri had negotiated with previously. He was surprised to encounter her again under such circumstances. Yaejin continuously attacked Hayama, but he refrained from harming her, choosing to defend rather than retaliate with his weapon. The leader noticed Hayama's reluctance to harm a Tsukimagami he was familiar with, despite his willingness to mercilessly confront enemies. He concluded that sending Hayama to live with Botan had softened him rather than fostering his growth. The boss was about to use his magic to confine Hayama into a puppet for easy manipulation, but Hayama accepted Yaejin's attack and struck her in the eye. He then snatched all the charms thrown by the boss and charged forward, breaking the jaw of a henchman and pointing his weapon at the boss. Yaejin returned to normal since Hayama's hit was aimed at the spell binding her. The boss's daughter, recalling a past encounter with Hayama's siblings and their stories about him, advised her father to stop. She feared that if Hayama fought seriously, they would certainly lose, and she offered to help Hayama if her father continued, having developed an interest in him. Subsequently, the boss called off his men, laughing and claiming that the entire ordeal was just a test before issuing Hayama's permit. He also apologized for speaking ill of Botan's family, admitting his fear of not being able to outwit Hayama. Surprisingly, he found Hayama easier to deceive than expected and decided to entrust Yaejin to him. Tsubaki, his daughter, then gave Hayama her contact details, offering to chat about his siblings sometime. Yaejin, still unaware of what transpired, was told by Hayama that he would explain on their way home. Arriving home, everyone was busy preparing hot pot. Yaejin was still concerned about being in a house of Tsukimagami hunters. Hayama asked her to endure for a day as his family would come to take her away tomorrow. Botan, worried upon seeing Hayama disheveled, fetched some items to bandage him. Hayama called Yaejin inside and requested Botan to let her stay for a day. Botan, seeing Yaejin's ragged appearance and her beauty, suspected Hayama of wrongdoing. Hayama then had to sit down to explain the situation. Meanwhile, Mr. Kushige returned home drunk, and Nagi took the opportunity to get Yaejin's number. The next morning, the others went out shopping. Haori stayed home to take care of Mr. Kushige. Hayama asked for permission to go out as he needed to take Yaejin somewhere. Haori suggested Botan accompany them, deeming it inappropriate for Hayama to be alone with a beautiful woman. Yaejin, finding Hayama's gaze intimidating, also wanted Botan to join them. The three of them went to the place where Yaejin used to live with her former owner when she was just a mortar for grinding medicine. Yaejin didn't remember her owner's face clearly, but she always had a sense of attachment to that place. She had returned there a few times, never going inside but feeling content just being outside. Yaejin decided to leave early, not wanting to impose on the couple's time. Hayama and Botan had to explain that the engagement was just a scheme by Haori's group. At the train station, Yejin thanked Hyoma for all his help, but he insisted it was just part of his job. Yejin expressed her feeling that Baton was like a true master to all Tsukimagami, inspiring hope, and suggested that Hyoma continue to protect her. That afternoon, Baton thanked Hyoma for taking her along and helping her learn more. She then inquired about his past hatred for Tsukimagami. Realizing Haori hadn't told her, Hyoma shared that his twin siblings were killed by a Tsukimagami they encountered on the street. The memory of the Tsukimagami impaling his siblings and laughing haughtily was something he could never forget. Baton apologized for bringing up painful memories, but suggested Hyoma should have shared this sooner. He now understood that not all Tsukimagami are the same, as his uncle had said. Baton also noticed that Hyoma had changed from his initial impression. His previous words had been hurtful, but now she looked forward to his complete transformation. Hyoma sensed glances directed at him, including one filled with killing intent. Yu's group tried to stop her from pressuring Hyoma, but she couldn't accept Baton dating him. Baton wished Hyoma would call her by her first name, not her last. The group had to restrain Yu from threatening Hyoma. Soon after, the Kyoto protection team discovered traces of Tsukimagami torturing humans to death. The puppets sent by their boss had been destroyed, indicating at least 3 perpetrators. The boss suspected one of the 3 factions Aogi mentioned was responsible for this act. The next day, Baton cautioned Hyoma to be careful, noting that he often returned home with injuries. When Hyoma tried calling Baton by her name, he sensed a threatening aura. Baton had to forbid Yu from causing trouble with Hyoma, as she had allowed their cooperation. Subsequently, Hyoma and Yu went on a mission together. Hyoma understood that this task must be challenging if both he and Yu were needed. They were set to face Tung Nguyen Hoa, a notorious gang in Kyoto known for using execution and torture tools as their vessels. 4 years ago, the protection team had exerted considerable effort to suppress them. This time, it appeared that 3 remnants of the gang were behind the recent incidents. Nagi and the others were left at home due to concerns that these criminals might target Baton. Hyoma felt relieved that he could fight these criminals without needing to listen to their grievances. During the mission, Hyoma met Tsubaki, who would assist him this time. Yu joked about reporting back that wherever Hyoma goes, he chases after girls. Tsubaki and Yu were acquainted, and Yu informed Hyoma that Tsubaki would soon lead the protection team, so maintaining good relations with her would be beneficial. When Hyoma noticed no one else around, Aogi explained that only the 3 of them would participate in the mission. The 2 accompanying him would provide guidance but not engage in combat. The rest of their group was dispersing other charms around the city to search, while their trio would independently investigate the gang's hideout. Upon arrival, Hyoma was impressed with Aogi's initiative in exploring the area. However, Hyoma was the catalyst for these events. The protection team had not interfered with Tung Nguyen Hoa as they had remained quiet. But ever since Hyoma arrived and had confrontations with some of their members, the gang started to stir, dissatisfied with Hyoma's actions, as those he fought were connected to Tung Nguyen Hoa. The 3 gang members now showed themselves. Hyoma questioned them about their reasons for harming people. They simply stated they did as they pleased, and such actions were in line with their nature as torture instruments. They had planned to ambush the protection team but, failing to extract information from their captives, ended up waiting here. Hyoma decided he no longer needed to be lenient with Tsubaki too wanted to witness Hyoma's true strength and see if he was the person she had been waiting for. Aogi attempted to avoid a fight but was quickly immobilized by Tsubaki with a charm and pushed into a nearby field of force. The fire-wielding gang member also charged at Tsubaki, while the curly-haired one dived down to confront Hyoma. Preferring a smaller group, Hyoma wanted to quickly deal with this adversary alongside Yu. Meanwhile, Aogi tried to talk his way out of the confrontation, but the woman he faced had disliked him for a long time, finding him cunning and self-serving, and especially despising his tendency to flatter humans. Offended by the insults, Aogi instructed his team to attack. Hyoma and Yu coordinated to shoot a hairpin into the man's hand, and Yu even managed to hit his neck with another pin. Despite being wounded, the man regenerated, having evolved to self-repair his body. He pushed Yu aside, noticing that his blade had shortened after being cut by Hyuma's scissors, the gateway scissors to the demon world, capable of obliterating any object they cut by sending it to the demon world. The man then surrounded Hyuma with blades, but just as they were about to slash Hyuma's neck, they stopped abruptly. Tsubaki, on the other side, had already dealt with the fire user, as her target was even more powerful. She recognized Hyuma's similarity in pursuing the paper umbrella wielder. Hyuma sliced through the surrounding blades. The woman of force, distracted by Tsubaki, was apprehended by Aoji's teammate, while Aoji himself delivered a fatal blow to her. His teammate lost another layer of shell, leaving only 3 remaining. The Razor Man, deciding to use his final form, transformed into a monstrous creature. But Yu returned to assist. She wrapped the entire house in her hairpin and signaled Hyuma to retreat. Hyuma acknowledged but rushed forward with her, forcing her to adapt her strategy. She hurled the entire building at the creature, which Hyuma split in 2 while nimbly dodging the household objects to land safely. Yu then confronted Hyuma for not understanding her plan, scolding him for not taking care and for being more reckless than thoughtful, especially since Botan had warned him to be cautious. The Razor Man, not yet dead, dragged himself through the forest, only to be found by the boss of the protection team. The boss recognized the potential of the defeated gang member, initially thinking he could have been useful. However, his rebellious and autonomous actions rendered him worthless, and he was promptly eliminated. Tsubaki later received news from her father that the Razor Man had been completely dealt with. She revealed her motivation for pursuing the paper umbrella wielder was due to the high regard she held for Hyuma's siblings, whom she considered a source of entertainment due to their strength. She despised the paper umbrella wielder for taking away her enjoyment and wanted to exact revenge. Tsubaki then invited Hyuma to join her in this pursuit. Despite the tempting offer, which she knew could easily lure Hyuma, she was aware that if he sided with her, Tsubaki would exhaust him, just like her father who exploited everything under his control. Grateful for the invitation, Hyuma politely declined. On their way back, Yu asked if he had no intention of joining Tsubaki. Hyuma reaffirmed his commitment to defeating the paper umbrella wielder with his own strength, as he had promised his siblings, and his stay was also due to Botan. Yu speculated that Hyuma might be developing feelings for Botan, which he himself had yet to recognize. Once home, Hyuma was scolded for his numerous injuries. A few days later, Hiyori announced a celebration for an upcoming festival. The others went out to buy supplies, while Botan and Hyuma were tasked with finding a large pot in the house. Hiyori hoped this opportunity would help progress Botan's relationship with Hyuma, and even provided a suggestion list, worrying that Hyuma's straightforwardness might misinterpret Botan's actions as peculiar. She doubted Hyuma would pay much attention to romantic gestures. Meanwhile, Hiyori skillfully bought meat before other housewives by extending her arm unusually long. Yu was eager to return early to prevent Botan and Hyuma from being alone too long. Kagami used her magic mirror to pick the best fish, while Suzuri negotiated a lower price with his charm. Nagi, to secure wine, had to compete in a drinking contest with the store owner. While all this was happening, Botan continually found herself in awkward situations with Hyuma. From accidentally touching hands while carrying items, to him standing right behind her as she reached for something. She didn't want to be the only one feeling awkward, especially since Hyuma seemed completely indifferent. However, she eventually realized that was just his nature and decided to let it go. Later, while looking for another place, she dropped a suggestive note. Hyuma read it, and Botan had no choice but to admit that it was Hiyori's idea. She thought he wouldn't care, but he suddenly turned away, making her suspicious. Realizing his unusual way of speaking, she understood he was feeling shy and determined to confront him about it. But he kept avoiding it, leading to an accidental fall where they ended up on top of each other. Both were blushing, but the tension was palpable from the door. Hyuma got caught in a hairpin while the neighborhood elder had already left after playing chess with Mr. Kushige all day. Hearing they were looking for a large pot, he mentioned he had borrowed it and hadn't returned it yet. Hiyori then remembered, leaving Hyuma's group not too pleased. With the pot finally available, the whole family gathered for a hot pot meal. Watching everyone eating together, Hyuma felt they were like a real family. Botan, after getting drunk, clung to Hyoma, leading even Nagi to join you in the anti-couple group. Later, Botan was taken to sober up. She apologized for the day's events, but Hyoma blamed it all on Haori. He reflected on how every family has a teasing older sister, recalling how his own sister used to joke about opposite-gender friends. Hyoma found the household lively and interesting, something he might not have appreciated before. Soon, they were both pulled back into the ongoing meal. When Botan awoke midway, she found the party over and everyone asleep. A hair clip falling out brought back painful memories, but seeing Hyoma sleeping peacefully, she put it away. The next day, Botan joined Hyoma as he was heading to the team's place to order some equipment. This gear could protect him from enemy attacks, like how Tsubaki remained unscathed despite being hit by a fire attack previously. He had read about the models and knew there would be a compatibility test before placing an order. Upon arrival, they encountered Tsubaki. Tsubaki teased them about looking like a couple before leading them upstairs to order their outfit. They were taken to a Tsukimagami store, where a sewing machine Tsukimagami would create garments with the properties of other Tsukimagamis. Tsubaki demonstrated how it worked. A piece of fabric transformed into a full outfit. Hyoma was initially reluctant to let a Tsukimagami attach to him, but slapped his cheek to calm down. He reasoned that if it would reduce injuries and worry Botan less, he would do it. He then decided to physically test the fabric. It formed into a fist and punched him, and he punched back. After recognizing each other's strengths, Hyoma negotiated with the fabric to become his outfit. Leaving the store, his new outfit didn't look much different from the old one. A few days later, Hyoma agreed to help Botan with a club-related task. He helped her fix a club sign, leading Botan to call him cousin. Her friends questioned why she seemed to have so many siblings, causing her to hurriedly pull Hyoma away. She was then approached by another friend, so she told Hyoma to go ahead. Hyoma found school life quite active. Suzuri and Nagi were also at the school when suddenly Nagi noticed Itsuki. She cast a spell on Hyoma, trapping him in a barrier with Kai. Kai was there to test and gauge Hyoma's abilities. Hyoma, confused but determined to deal with any Tsukimagami targeting humans, continuously dodged. He noticed his agility was enhanced by his new outfit, and Kai's use of objects as weapons revealed him as a samurai armor and weapon Tsukimagami. Hyoma countered Kai's attacks and was struck by a helmet summoned by him. He realized Kai might be one of the 3 great Tsukimagamis of Kyoto. Meanwhile, Nagi confronted Itsuki, asking why she was there and where Kai was. Itsuki revealed that Kai was playing with Hyoma inside the barrier. She remarked that Kai might find Hyoma too weak and could decide to deal with him right there. Itsuki refused to let anyone interfere with Kai, declaring she'd be their opponent if they tried to disrupt. Kai couldn't believe someone as weak as Hyoma could threaten to destroy the paper umbrella Tsukimagami. Hyoma asked if Kai knew about it, but Kai avoided the question, merely criticizing Hyoma's shallow determination for revenge. Hyoma used a charm to bind Kai and attacked from the smoke, but was quickly grabbed and slammed to the ground. Nagi and Suzuri rushed in. Nagi was capable of confronting Kai, but stopped when Itsuki was caught. The fight ended as Itsuki noted time was up, and Kai was resealed. Hyoma wanted Nagi to explain everything, but first he needed to get off the ground. Meanwhile, Botan overheard junior club members admiring Hyoma's looks and wanting to keep him around. Hearing this, Botan shooed them away to lock up. Nagi explained that Kai was merely greeting Hyoma in his exaggerated way. Nagi was surprised by Itsuki's weakness, barely flicking her before she collapsed. Regarding the paper umbrella matter, Kai bluntly stated Hyoma wasn't strong enough to deserve an answer. He wasn't as strong as when his siblings were killed, partly because he relied on the weapons they left behind instead of his own. Botan overheard this from around the corner. Kai also cruelly suggested that keeping Hyoma near Botan was harsh, as the paper umbrella Tsukimagami attacked his siblings because of Botan. At that time, Botan was losing faith in humanity, leading Tsukimagamis to share her discontent. Nagi and Suzuri, enraged, wanted to challenge Kai, but Itsuki resealed him and dragged him away, apologizing for Kai's words. Kai was taken back to confinement. Afterwards, Hyoma requested a few days off, which Suzuri agreed to. Kai's words were rumors, but they couldn't dismiss the possibility of their truth. Regardless of their accuracy, Hyuma was concerned as it involved his sibling. Only the high-ranking members knew the truth. The representative Tsukimagamis of the Exorcism Bureau couldn't possibly know. In the following days, Hyuma still hadn't returned, leaving Botan despondent. She worried about how he must have felt, especially if she had any connection to his loss, fearing she could no longer face him. Therefore, she went to see Tsubaki, hoping to meet her father to inquire whether she was the reason behind the death of Hyuma's siblings. Her father had to clarify things for her. When leaving, he mentioned hearing about Hyuma's disappearance and revealed that Hyuma had been there for a few days. Hyuma had come to train, acknowledging his need for improvement. His father urged Hyuma to return home, as it was troublesome to have him there constantly. On his way out, Hyuma learned that Botan knew about his disappearance and admired her courage for seeking confirmation. He confessed he never doubted Botan and considered Kai's words nonsense. He acknowledged his own shortcomings and vowed to force Kai to reveal information next time. Botan admired his steadfastness on his path. She then shared why she had lost trust in humanity before. She was kidnapped as a child. At 7, she was to be taken in by distant relatives, choosing to trust her father's sister. The aunt took her home to live a normal life away from Tsukimagamis. While Haori's group searched for her, she enjoyed a happy life with her aunt, almost considering her a second mother. However, this ended abruptly in an accident caused by the same man, resulting in her aunt's death. Botan was traumatized and lost her memory from that moment. When she awoke, everything was over, and she was with her current family, leading to her mistrust in people. She feared deceit and witnessing loved ones' loss. Hyuma assured Botan to trust him, promising he'd never betray her and would prove it by protecting her. Hyuma flashed a smile that took Botan by surprise, as it was the first time she had seen him smile so brightly. Even Yu thought Hyuma didn't have the muscles to smile, which offended him, and he left in a huff. Haori, overhearing everything from behind, sensed progress in their relationship. The bond between Botan and Hyuma had grown stronger, and who knows what challenges lay ahead for them. To find out more, stay tuned for part 2 of Monogatari. Goodbye.